Vroom! Benj stomps on the gas and speeds around the semi, slowing down the flow of traffic. He weaves back into his lane and leaves the truck in the dust. The radio bumps in the background, and we're all jamming. Grace and I look at each other and in perfect Valley Girl synchrony sing, "No, seriously, who is that?" Benj keeps his speed and weaves once again into the other lane. My attention is pulled from the music as I notice the oncoming traffic. Benj was cutting this one close. The car's engine revs as Benj pushes the pedal to the floor. We edge past the first truck and begin passing the second. I look from Benj to the oncoming traffic, and then back to Benj. Benj's gaze is fixed on the oncoming traffic, a look of confidence and serenity plastered on his face as he races directly toward the oncoming sedan. Well, I think, if you're going to crash, at least crash confidently, ... The car rumbles as it continues to pick up speed. None of us are paying attention to the music anymore. Then, with the oncoming car only 30 or so yards away, Benj snaps the steering wheel right and pulls just in front of the second truck. I breathe a sigh of relief. That was close, ... But then, I read the bold letters printed across the body of the sedan we almost ran into. Police! My stomach drops, and I know Benj sees it too, 'cause his knuckles go white as he grasps the steering wheel. I turn around in my seat and watch the cop slow down and pull into the next pull-off to turn around. Oh no, he's turning around, ... I mutter. Benj looks at me briefly. Oh man, ... I purse my lips. Well, he hasn't turned on his lights yet, so here's what I think is the play. He's already seen you majorly speeding. If you keep at this speed and just pass as many people as you can, you might lose him. Benj nods slowly and locks in. All right, he says as he begins to overtake like there's no tomorrow, ... My eyes stay glued to the rear window as I watch for pursuit. Seconds pass, then a minute. Benj continues to overtake at every opportunity he can, putting more and more trucks between him and the cop. I keep watching and don't see anything, but I am nevertheless overwhelmed by the sense of being hunted. 3 minutes pass, and then eventually 5. I manage to relax a bit and pull my eyes from the road behind us. I nod, almost as if reassuring myself. I think, ... I think you lost him. Benj keeps his view on the road in front. Well, better safe than sorry, he states, overtaking yet another car. Another 5 minutes pass, and I can feel the tension in the car dissolving. It was basically certain now. Benj had outrun the cop. I grin and look at Grace, and then to Benj. He grins back. I can't believe you didn't get caught just now, I exclaim, shaking my head. Benj just beams. I have the perfect song for this. He begins looking through his phone. After a moment, he finds it, and his phone snaps back onto its place on his dash. I hear the first few chords and grin. Oh, yeah. The first verse comes up, and Grace, Benj, and I all sing at the top of our lungs. Walking through the forest like a ninja archer. I don't know that song, otherwise I would sing it, but I don't know that one. Walking through the forest like a ninja archer. Hee hee. Yep, that is the tale of how Benj outran a cop. Quite a thrilling experience. But it was legal, mind you. The cop never turned on his lights or sirens, so it doesn't technically count as evading the law. Who knows? Maybe he just wanted to turn around to get some ice cream after Benj passed in front of him. Why he turned around will forever remain an unfathomable mystery. XD. Anyway, upon the completion of the last life update, which I then proceeded to record, I, being pressed for time, consumed a baby portion of food and then embarked on a journey to the cancer center to speak with Dr. Mountjoy. What a name, right? Now, regarding this meeting, I feel like I was bait and switched, because the way McFarland presented it to me was he would call in Mountjoy for a second opinion, a.k.a. a person who does a stare and says, blah, blah, de blah, blah. But, in reality, Mountjoy was called in to progress me to the next stage of treatment, a.k.a. salvage chemo, a.k.a. not a second opinion. So yeah, that was a bummer. But, honestly, in person, he was fantastic. I felt like we were actually able to have a conversation, and sure, he didn't love my cure myself of cancer with off-label drugs plan, but I was able to hear his reasons out, he heard mine, and I felt like I was talking with a human, not an authoritarian wall, which is my experience with most of the medical world thus far. And see, I might maybe not mind that immensely if they were a competent authoritarian wall. But no, thus far in my experience, doctors are like mechanics in that they drastically overcharge for providing a service in which they are only moderately skilled, and which could be done cheaper and often more effectively if done by oneself. I think I've developed a hate of the medical personnel that may come to surpass my hate of mechanics. We'll see. Anyway, the point is, Dr. Mountjoy felt like a refreshing perforated wall. An obstacle, to be sure, but a climbable one, instead of the polished obsidian walls that were the other medical practitioners. Also, I feel like this analogy has gone as far as it can, and now it's hitting a wall, But it's a perforated wall, mind you. I could keep going if I really wanted to, wink. So, to annex the tangent upon which I traveled, and to abandon my wayward journey for a quest filled with purpose and grounded in tradition, I shall return to the point. Mountjoy was cool. However, to now embark on another tangent, having just returned to the path, XD. He was only cool in person. He is like Toothless, whereby in person, he bites, and it's a gummy, playful sort of bite. Over email, the teeth come out, and suddenly you find your arm missing and yourself without a PET scan. It was quite tragic. You know how you'll write people an email or a text that says like 3 things, and then in their response, they'll only address like one of those things, even if you explicitly ask them to address the other points? Yeah, he did that. Which is honestly so vexing, because, I know you didn't just forget the other things I said. They're still right there in front of you in bullet point format and writing. But no, he would respond like they didn't exist. And then, when I asked very explicitly and simply, would you please refer me for a PET scan, such that there was no way to respond without addressing my request, he just ghosted me. What the heck, my doctor dude? I'm not even asking you to help me get the drugs. All I'm asking is that you give me a referral so I can pay out of pocket, mind you, to get a PET scan so I can know if my cure myself of cancer plan is working or killing me. This seems like this would be in your best interest medically, Like, even if you think my plan is bunk and won't work, it seems like you would want to test me to find out. That way, when my plan fails and I've got stage 4 cancer, you can be like, look, my guy, the cancer is in your bones. Time to give up on your wax science pipe dream, But no, he's not willing to even refer me to get a PET scan. I hate doctors, All that to say, Mountjoy is both cool and not cool at the same time. Also, Alan was with me for that whole Mountjoy meetup experience. Right after I had an appointment scheduled with Dr. Belia, a sort of natural path doctor who is baby whack, but let's be honest, all these alternative doctors are baby whack. So what else is new? XD. And that went okay. I saw Renee there, since she works there, engage in some small talk, and that was nice. Then I spoke with Dr. Mann, got this RGCC test scheduled, and then left his office to go consume whiskey still burgers with Alan, which were big yum as always, and also the conversation we had while eating them was quite good. Alan is a lad. Let me just say. From there, I met up with John, and I smoked my herb pipe while he smoked a cigar. And I actually don't remember what we talked about, but I'm sure it was a decent conversation, because that's how John and my conversations have been as of late, Upon concluding that, I sent out the last life update email, put it in the backlogs, and then pushed myself to do sprints as a form of exercise, which was quite exhausting. So much worse than long-distance running, oddly enough, But I did it. Once I got back, I did some medical stuff and went to sleep. The next day, I woke up at 6 in the morning for some godforsaken reason, which I can't remember. But I'm sure whatever the reason was, it wasn't good enough, I then worked on cancer stuff straight until 1, played magic games with the Myers, and then played spike ball with the very same. I think we switched over to doing competitive serves at this point, which was fun, and I think a good call. Once I got home, I ate da food with da fam, did cancer stuff, and then Grace, Emerson, and I all decided to spontaneously walk over to CSU barefoot. I've had an obsession with barefoot walking as of late, And see, as we were walking, the sprinklers in front of the health and exercise department turned on, and Emerson disingenuously suggested, hey, we could run the sprinklers, to which I responded, all right, and jumped into the sprinklers. There's a decent hill outside the exercise science building, and because the sprinklers made the grass big wet, I discovered one could slide down, and it was quite enjoyable. Hence, With a non-trivial amount of persuasion, I eventually got Grace and even Emerson at the end to join me, and it was quite fun. Surprisingly, Emerson got the sliding technique so much faster than Grace. Hee hee, my theory is Grace has some sense of body protection, while Emerson just doesn't. Hence, Emerson could just be like, yeet, while Grace had a hard time forcing herself, XD. So yeah, that was big fun, and here's a picture from afterwards that Emerson took. From there, we got changed and ended up talking into the night until about 1, which was big good. The next morning, since Emerson ended up sleeping over, I joined her and Grace at Little Bird, in which mildly interesting conversations ensued, and then I left and went to play racquetball with Benj, which was big fun. First of all, we are very evenly matched, so that made the games quite good. Second off, who knew running around in a box smacking a ball with a racket could be so tiring? Holy cow, it was actually a fantastic workout and very exhausting. We also discovered that Chilson Center has this dumb rule that only old people can use their table tennis and pool tables. Like, what's up with that? Though they did mention there is a chance that rule will change, and if it does, there's a good chance Benj and I will just buy a pass to the Chilson Center and go there quite frequently. Wink. After racquetball, I went home, did some cancer reading, and then Noah came over, and we sat on my front porch, sipped tea, and talked about the filioque controversy for like an hour and a half. Might I just say that I need more INTPs in my life, ... Like, how cool is it that Noah and I can literally just chill on the porch with tea and have an epic conversation about deadly intellectual topics. About heady intellectual topics for hours. Actually, so great. Noah, you're fantastic. From there, I journeyed to Thursday night at Joe's house, procuring a domesticated Neo along the way. Domesticated, huh? Neo along the way, and then we played Diablo for like 3 hours. Once that wrapped up, I talked with Neo in the car some, and then went to bed. The next morning I woke up, did some trivial things, then had a smashing conversation with Ben and Amelia over at Ben's house that included all of Catholic Talk Part 1 and a bit of Catholic Talk Part 2. They both seemed really interested the whole time, and I think they found what I had to say quite helpful. Plus, we got good food from Safeway. I got this massive sandwich. So that's always nice. I actually enjoy teaching people meaningful things so much. Hardcore flow state inducer. Wink. After that 4-hour or so talk, I then got home and FaceTimed with a traditional medicine cancer survivor who 100% had dominant TE and was most certainly an ESTJ. Hence, I was more talked at than talked to and didn't get that much useful info out of it. But it happened and it was mildly useful. As soon as that ended, I then hopped in my flaming Phoenix and locomoted to Loveland Sports Park, where I proceeded to play a great game of soccer, though my thigh muscle was somewhat torn, so I couldn't go all out, which sucked. I then, exhausted and sore, went to the Myers house, took a shower, and ate some food before journeying with Benj in his new car, mind you. He got one of those, ... to Southgate, where we proceeded to swing dance, and I was so sweaty. Oh, cool. Like, not sweating as in I tried hard, but like sweaty as in sweat was dripping from my forehead. It was vexing. Also, Grace very Sorry guys, keep in mind I record this all on one take. I don't have like a professional setup or anything. Okay. Also, Grace very actually reminded me of this fact every 5 minutes. The one thing it could be is I use an antiperspirant deodorant prior to going, which I never do. Hence, I suspect, in a cruel and ironic twist of fate, that was the cause of my demise. But regardless, I danced with all the females. Jeez. So, I didn't let my lack of hygiene stop me. 'Cause lol, when do I ever allow a lack of hygiene to stop me, XD? After the dancing, I was double super sore, and I danced on my soccer blisters, so that was lovely and not painful. Hence, I lost some of my characteristic energy due to my body being in pain. From there, the Myers had a few LMT people over, and I joined, but that was a garbage gathering, because they were all just engaging in their inside jokes, and I didn't have the energy. Bro, theater kids, am I right? After all I had done that day, I pushed myself into the conversation. Therefore, I was mostly just passive and talked with Joe and Karina. However, as the night wore on, I realized it wasn't worth my time to stay, even by green standards, so Grace and I left. The next morning, I kicked off with cancer book reading. had a Funame break, and then went back to the Myers once again to engage in kilt sewing with Noah and Benj. Karina instructed us on the way of the needle, and I honestly think we did pretty well. That could be definitely interpreted a couple ways. Instructed you on the way of the needle. At some point in there, Grace, Emerson, and Katie stopped by, and Katie aided me for a bit, but then nothing was really happening for them, so they just left. I managed to finish my kilt just before I had to leave to get to Molly's house on time, so I did that. As a side thing, though, the kilts turned out a bit puffy. Hence, they look far more skirt-like than first anticipated. ... If you iron them pretty heavily, though, I think they're not too bad. But they definitely need to be ironed, XD. So I then got to Molly's house, only to discover she was absent on a run because she thought we were meeting on Sunday, not Saturday. But we had explicitly agreed to meet on Saturday, so ... I was right. XD. So yeah, I chilled on the porch for a bit, of which here is a picture. Kind of trippy experience, honestly. See, you have to understand that Molly is my oldest friend. Well, unless you count Caleb Christian, but we haven't talked in like 6 months, so I don't know. ... And so what that means is I remember being at this house when I was in 3rd grade. Hence, just sitting there on that porch again just brought back all these ancient childhood memories, and it was really cool to kind of relive them and compare them to my present. Very interesting experience. That said, eventually Molly got back from her run, and she was all like, "Alex?" And I was all like, "Yes?" And she was all like, "Sunday?" And I was all like, "False, Saturday." And she was all like, "Oh yes, of course, I was so wrong, and you are so right, just like always." These are direct quotes. Molly definitely, totally said that, ... So yeah, we talked for ages about many a thing, and it was quite a good conversation. Decently convinced Molly is an ESFP, but not sure, ... Anyway, from there I went home and ended up hanging out with Grace gang until the wee hours of the night. I think we drove to the radio towers, but I don't entirely remember if I'm being honest. The next morning, I woke up early to attend an Orthodox liturgy because my friend Katie was getting chastised, and she moderately desired my attendance. The amount of desire was difficult to discern, but I settled upon it being non-negative and trivially significant. XD. So yeah, that was a nice change of pace, kind of meh liturgy as far as beauty goes, but the people after were great. I felt like I died and went to nerd heaven. See, for most of the world, most people think having an obtuse amount of knowledge about obscure religion is a socially useless, if not detrimental, feature. But for the orthobros, it's effectively the chief social currency. Hence, for once, my nerddom made me extremely cool and based, and I have beautiful conversations. Katie's brother Moses and I got talking, and he's probably the smartest Orthodox person I've met in person. So I'm going to pick his brain sometime soon. He wasn't able to answer some of the big questions I have, at least in our first talk, but I'm hopeful. Also, I'm thinking of getting him and Catholic Alexander together to have a pseudo-debate, which I think is genius. So yeah, holistically, I was quite glad I attended Katie's catechesis. Okay, you've used 2 different words in here, and I'm not sure which is correct. Chastised and catechesis. Catechesis? Yeah, I don't know, man. From there, I drove to Southgate and joined in on Lunch Bunch. After that, I drove to Neo's house for D&D, did that, and then from there, I journeyed to Jake's house for a surprise birthday party for Sam, which was largely, oh boy, here we go, which was largely unremarkable except for the conversation of death. Here we go. Now, see, it wasn't, I was there for this, so I know, yeah, I know what this is. Now, see, it wasn't death because it was boring or uninteresting. On the contrary, it was exactly the opposite of those things. In fact, it was probably one of the most significant and intriguing conversations I've ever been a part of. The only problem is I'm much more green now, and my green died, the whole time. I'm so much more sensitive to people's opinions of me these days, and obviously because we all project our current stage onto those around us, unless apparently you're yellow, which is interesting, ... I was sure that everyone else was also taking the ratings to heart. Plus, I could see when some people got low ratings, it significantly hurt them. So just overall, I was like, ah! But on the inside, of course, I didn't want to disrupt the group harmony, ... Gosh, I sound like an FE user, XD. So yeah, it was a very significant conversation, but probably an unwise one in hindsight. And I accept full responsibility for propagating the activity. I wanted to know what people thought of me, because lol, green, so I gave in. For the record, I thought it went great. So yeah, that happened. And then I went to sleep at like 12:30 that night. The next morning, I worked on a cacophony of cancer-related things and scheduling until I ended up driving to Joe's house and hanging out with him for an age. Very good conversations. From there, we met up with Neo, Noah, and Josh and bought sweets for Noah's fast-approaching wedding. Nice. Then from there, we went straight to D&D, where John guest starred in the campaign and was so well loved as a player, and due to popular demand and his newfound availability, I decided to add him in. So yeah, he's part of Monday nights now. That was a great session, probably one of the best so far. Then on the drive back, Neo and I got talking, and it was decided now would be a good time to try and repair Sydney's and my relationship. Hence, with much trepidation, I agreed, and Neo sat us both down, and man, that was a rough conversation. See, until Sydney, I have never really had a falling out with a friend before, so this really was quite uncharted territory for me. Second, it turns out that while I am great at helping other people reconcile and translate, when it came to Sydney, it's like my NI just yeeted itself from my stack. Like, I just became raw TE with a touch of FI stubbornness, or at least that's how it felt talking with Sydney. So I really believe that Neo's mediation was not helpful, but genuinely necessary for the conversation to happen. AKA, for the first time, I felt unable to bridge the gap and step in Sydney's shoes, and I needed someone else to bridge it for me, AKA Neo. It was a very odd and uncomfortable scenario, and I don't think it was just because the issue involved me personally. Like, I have had a number of significant conflicts that have involved me personally, and usually in those cases, my NI is still very operable, but with Sydney in particular, it just wasn't happening. I have a few theories as to why that might be, but it's still not entirely clear to me, ... The next morning, I discovered a scientific fact. 28 milligrams of melatonin makes you tired. Who would have thunk, XD? For perspective, the max dose is 5 milligrams. The only reason I took 28, is because my cancer protocol told me to. So yeah, it seems that when I start my drugs for realsy, I might be perpetually tired, which is going to suck. But hey, it's better than chemo. And then went on a drive. We were originally going to hike, but then it rained, with Jack, Emerson's boyfriend, and we talked about all the things. And he was surprisingly vulnerable for like our first significant hangout. I mean, I was there for it, just didn't expect it. I was able to explain all the things to him, and while I suspect the retention was low, cause lol, ESTP, XD, I think he found it helpful. After that, I went to Qdoba with the fam and caught them up on all the things going down in my cancer world. I then read my cancer book for a while, but surprisingly found myself without the usual drive I'm so accustomed to. See, this is actually somewhat of a problem. I've been in orange for so long, I figured my exorbitant and unyielding willpower to achieve was just hard-baked into my character. But it turns out, while that's particularly true, because DOM-TE, I've still been running on orange steroids. So now that those are fading, I think I'm green-orange, aka 2/3 green, 1/3 orange, at this point. I only really have that kind of unyielding endless drive when it comes to people these days, not things. Hence, it's made it much harder to study knowledge for knowledge's sake like I used to, ... But on the flip side, I've become so much more caring and involved in people's lives, so, maybe it's worth it. Anyway, due to a lack of motivation, I went over to CSU and sat in the hot tub, and then the sauna, in that order. I discovered that 20 minutes in the sauna is actual death. So hot! ... But I pushed through. I then did more cancer reading, took a nap because melatonin overload, and then journeyed to the Myers, where I went on a 2 or so hour barefoot night walk with Johanna that was big good. One of the best conversations we've had, for sure. Once we got back, I stuck around the Myers house, and then Jake and I went on a barefoot night walk, at which point my feet started bleeding, but I pushed through for Jake. Oh, wait, that's me. That's me. I remember this. And then I talked with Karina and Joe for a brief amount of time before heading home. The next morning began with a doctor's appointment, in which my provider just gave me a healthy serving of contempt and pity. I told her about my plan to cure myself of cancer, and from that point on, the entire meeting was just her looking and treating me like a deluded child in search of Santa Claus, which I must say is a pretty effective tactic. I'm usually quite indifferent to what people think of me, but the contempt-pity combo turns out to be uniquely potent. Not at getting me to change my mind, mind you, but in getting me to be like, oh, it's on, watch me, XD. So probably not the effect she was looking for, but an effect nonetheless. So yeah, that was just worse than useless, and I was grateful when it ended. I then went straight from that to hanging out with Brandon, wherein we went on a drive, talked, and also found some public land to shoot on, of which here are some pictures. I brought Dad's .22 and all that ammo I bought earlier but never used, and he brought his pistol. Maybe it was a Glock? And we shot cans in a target that blew in the wind. Pretty meh shooting, if I'm going to be honest. But still, nice to break from the usual. A really significant thing, though, is that I discovered Braden is an ESTP. Apparently, I just have an affinity for ESTPs, because I actually know quite a few of them, and I enjoy them quite a bit. But see, they always throw me off, ... Like, I never think their type is an ESTP, because all the ESTPs I know just don't quite match the stereotype like other types do. Like, I can spot an ENTP from ages away, but an ESTP? Yeah, nah, ... Regardless, it was cool to finally get a read on Braden's type, and that actually makes sense of quite a few things regarding our interactions in the past, since we've known each other for ages. From there, I got home, ate the food with the family while watching MBTI videos, and then worked out, did cancer things, and then had a pseudo-argument with Dad before then talking with Grace into the night till like 1 or something. Good conversation with Grace, not so much with Dad, but we ended it okay. The next morning, Dad and I met up for breakfast and worked through everything really well, and it was probably one of the best conversations I've ever had with Dad. So I'm really grateful we did that. Also, the breakfast sandwich at that place was magic. After that, I was scheduled to drive to Denver to meet this unorthodox doctor who said he would give me the off-label drugs I need. So, right before I left, I was like, this would be better with someone. So I hit up Karina, and it turned out she was free. And then we decided to let Joe be a fly on the wall and lay in the back seat with Maple. ... I shan't expound. So yeah, good conversations. Many things were explained to Karina, and Karina became enlightened, and then we made it to Dr. Singer's office, and things transpired. Now, first off, you have to understand, I'm paying this man $500 an hour to speak to him. $500! And believe it or not, that's the average going rate for non-traditional oncologists, so he wasn't even overpriced. Hence, going into the conversation, I was very goal-directed to the point. I had things I wanted to know, things I wanted to say, and I was on task. And while I did very well for most of it, there was one point in the conversation where I let my guard down and allowed Dr. Singer to lapse into an old man spiel about his late friend Nick. Ugh. And oh my gosh, that story killed me. Not because it was completely uninteresting or off topic, mind you, but because it took him 10 or 15 minutes to convey the information that Nick was an oncologist that was greatly successful using pancreatic enzymes to cure cancer. I didn't need to know that he bred his own lamb pancreases in New Zealand. I didn't need to know the resistance he experienced in his career. I didn't need to know about Nick's dad's pancreatic enzyme company, which, now that I think about it, it's kind of sus, isn't it? Your dad runs a company extracting and creating pancreatic enzymes? Talk about a weird product. Then you just happen to tout them as the cure-all for cancer. I didn't think of that before, but that seems like a definite conflict of interest. But I digress. The point is, he could have just told me, hey, pancreatic cancer enzymes are the way to go, in my opinion, because my friend Nick was quite successful with them. But no, he had to old man ramble, and I could just feel the life force being sucked out of me, ... It was like watching costs tick up at the gas pump, except you were... Oh, shoot, yeah, hang on a second. He cost you like $120 with that 15-minute rant. Oh, my gosh. I'm paying this guy approximately $9 a minute. A minute! So his little ramble about his dear dead friend Nick literally cost me over $100. Most expensive old man spiel I will probably ever experience. XD. And I think you can understand now why the whole time I was just dying inside. ... So yeah, aside from that, the talk wasn't too bad. He said he was going to get me all the drugs I wanted, but so far he's only got me 2 of the 6, and they are 2 of the easiest ones to obtain. ... Plus, he also said he would order me a PET scan, but that also hasn't happened at the time of writing, so I'm becoming more dubious of the occasion's goodness. Oh, also, Joe and Karina sat in with me on that. Forgot to mention that fact. I think Karina paid attention, but Joe just sat in because he wanted to see what a $500 conversation felt like. Apparently, it felt the same as any other conversation, XD. We then drove back. I talked to Karina about more interesting things, and then we were at Joe's house for Thursday night, but Neo couldn't show, so we just turned it into a most of the squad hangout minus Caleb. And it was pretty great. We walked around the lake and engaged in banter, sat in some fluffy grass, of which here are the pictures. Then, from there, we decided we should all go to a bar together, because we had never done that before. And at the bar, there were people playing chess, so I played them, much to the chagrin of my colleagues, XD, and won, and then I drank meh-tasting liquid while paying exorbitant prices for it. Also, Karina and Joe both were fairly lightweight as far as alcohol goes. Actually, it's more likely that Karina was lightweight and Joe has SI, so he could actually tell that he felt different while Noah and I couldn't. Because, lol, no inner body sense, XD. But yeah, it was a good time, and here's a picture. Still not really a big fan of alcohol, but the experience was nevertheless good. And then that was it. We called it a night. I drove home because I was fine, and I slept. Next morning, I began my day by helping Alan move, and, oh my gosh, might I just say, this man is an example to us all. Like, if I believed in moving atonement and Alan was Jesus, then I would be sold on the exemplar model of atonement. Like, there could be no propitiation or penal substitution. No, pure exemplar, XD. It was the most beautiful move I have ever performed. Everything, and I mean everything, was in neat, manageable boxes. He didn't even pack all the books in one giant box so that it was too heavy. It was genuinely glorious, and I will move for Alan any day of the week. The rest of you, yeah, not so much. You all need to go study under Alan, okay? He is the moving sensei, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. So yep, did that, worked on cancer stuff, just distressed some, because I had been running and doing so many things for ages, and then read about cancer, played soccer, and experienced a painful thigh, got a spontaneous foot scrub from Grace in an attempt to nurture my feet back to life. I got a massive blister and a developed pretty bad athlete's foot by this point, such that those around me were in a state of mixed disgust and dismay. Though I will say that foot scrub felt pretty great in the end. 6 out of 10 experience. Bro, what in the heck? After that, I hopped in Grace's car bed and rode around with Addie and Emerson, and then we, meaning Grace and I, chilled at Addie's house for a bit until she was like, leave forever and never come back. So we did-ish. I mean, we came back later, but we did leave. The next morning was filled with cancer reading. Then I did Faname, then I figured out cancer technicalities and bureaucracy matters. Then Grace and I drove over to Adelie's, I don't know what that's supposed to be, house and carpooled with her, Emerson, and Katie to Standfords, wherein we threw darts. I taught them all how to throw darts properly, and they actually picked it up pretty quick. We also did a bunch of casual, fun psychology things, and that was pretty great. Apparently, I'm magma, a mix of fire and earth. Wink. However, I will say the Stanford's food wasn't nearly as good as I remembered it, and man, it was pricey by the end. What? You're out on Stanford's already? Dude, I liked what I had there that one time we went there. Oh, well, I guess. We each dished out $25. Okay, that is kind of insane. So that was a bummer, but still, we had a good time overall, and it was a worthwhile experience. Once we got back, we decided to crash at Adelie's house. Adelie? I guess it's Adelie. The girls did this, okay? Yep, all right, cool. There's a picture. Also, I talked to Adelie's parents about all the things and subtly typed them as I did so. Hee, I'm sneaky like that, wink. And yeah, that was the evening. Once we got back home, I did some cancer research and such until bed. Sunday, I went to church, and then I went into the bass machine. Let me explain. You see, Peter has a car. It is yellow, and this fact is entirely irrelevant to its ability to produce obtuse amounts of bass. You don't understand. The bass is so strong, you feel it in your arm hair, and the pressure waves steal your breath away. You actually just can't talk when the bass is bumping. It's like no other sound experience I've ever had. Well, experienced. XD. Very cool. After that, Joe and I had some of the best banter and riffs off of each other at Lunch Bunch yet recorded. It was actually so much fun, XD. And then when I got home, I sent in my gut health test. Picked up a pile of drugs from Walgreens. There were actually so many, and me and the guys at the counter had a fun back and forth because they were like, we were just talking about you being like, what's going on with this guy that he needs so many drugs? So yeah, picked those up, and even though there were only one of each for most of them, since the reason I ordered so many was for my RGCC test, it would have still been a huge chunk of money if insurance didn't cover it, because you have to understand some of those drugs cost $860 per pill. Oh my goodness. Like actually, oh boy, here we go. Mebendazole, I guess, costs a fortune, and I need to take a pill a day, so hope insurance keeps up the good work, because otherwise I am very much screwed, XD. Oh, guys, we're only like halfway. This is going to be rough. I do this all in one take. Keep in mind, I'm so sorry. I got to get a drink of water really quick. Yeah, this is going to be a long one. So yeah, picked those all up, shoved them in a box, did cancer reading, chilled in the sauna over at CSU some, and then drove to the Myers house, where I journeyed to a Celtic women concert with Karina, April, Naomi, and Seth. The conversation there was somewhat lackluster, but that was anticipated. The concert itself, however, was quite good. First off, because it was my first concert I've ever been to. What? It was my first concert I've ever been to, so the whole experience was novel for me. But second, because Celtic women actually have fantastic... it's Celtic woman, not Celtic women. Just FYI there. Alex. Have fantastic voices, and also did a bunch of dancing and stuff the whole time. And oh my gosh, so many wardrobe changes, and hence it made it entertaining as well. Definitely glad I went to that. Here's a picture of our view. On the way back, we had a much more interesting conversation because I got to teach the car about the hat model, which everyone seemed pretty interested in. So that was fun. And yeah, once I got home, I slept. The next day, despite the state of my feet still being wounded, I attended Memorial Day soccer, and that was a lot of fun. Very enjoyable. My thighs still felt kind of torn, but I took it a bit easier this time. I didn't make things worse. Also, I had some pretty good moments and shots, not going to lie. Here's a picture of that. Once I got back from that, I did cancer stuff, existed in a sore body state, and ate food. I then attended Peter's graduation party, which started out quite lackluster. I tried to hop into some conversations with the nerds there, but I only had moderate success, and I didn't really want to talk with them anyway. So I mostly just played spikeball. So glad I brought it. A variety of games were played, and originally, once the Myers left, I was going to leave too. But then I got talking with Noah and then with Catherine, and then, as that was wrapping up, Peter asked if I wanted a game. So I obliged, and we played Winner Stays On. Well, see, I'm quite skilled at spikeball, and despite the other players mix-matching me with various teammates, to try and make me lose, I didn't lose a single game for the next 3 hours, and I played that entire time. So, while it was quite fun, it was also quite exhausting. Hence, at the end of that, I was mega dead, XD. Also during this time, Evan entered my radar. I think I like him and would like to spend more time with him. Once I got home, I ate burgers with the fam, and we all talked some. Then, despite my immense soreness, Grace managed to drag me to her car bed, at which point we hit up the usual Grace crew, but they were unavailable, so I suggested we try Eliana, since she lives fairly nearby. And then we ended up driving around with Eliana and Amelia for an age. We got ice cream, of which here is a pic. And then, yeah, Amelia and I just rode in the car bed. We went up to the radio towers and my abused feet died on the pokey metal walkway. Oh my gosh, so painful, ... And then on the way back, Eliana squished herself in with Amelia and I got to hear the anthology of her love life, which was intriguing. I've developed a whole new set of thoughts about how each type experiences crushes at this point in time that thus far seems quite accurate and also is very intriguing. So if anyone wants to know that, let me know. Wink. The next morning consisted of packing for the Maryland trip, then going into Dr. Bilica's office for the blood draw for the RCGG test, then paying out exorbitant amounts of money for the RCGG test. $4,000. Also, I should mention that as of late, people have just come out of the woodwork and given me money for cancer stuff. Like, it's been insane and also mega epic. It's only because of that radical generosity I can even dream of affording things like this test. Then, once that was completed and I got back home, Benj drove over, since we were taking his car to Maryland. We loaded up all of our stuff, and then the great trip began. All right, so first, let me explain the Maryland trip. I've spoken enough of my online friend Sydney. Anyone who's read these for a while knows who I'm talking about, and that whole story, so I won't recap. But the summary is she's getting married soon, and so I wanted to see her and get to know the real her before the wedding. Plus, and also significantly, I felt like my life was becoming monotonous, and also it would be a great experience to road trip with some people I really enjoy. Hence, a week-long road trip to Maryland was planned. The participants of that trip were Benj and Grace, though a number of people were invited for the fourth position, but either couldn't make it or just didn't want to. Hence, it ended up going vacant, which was a shame, honestly, because I think if we had one more person, it would have been ideal. Nevertheless, it was a fantastic time, one of my favorite trips for sure, but I'm getting ahead of myself. After we all loaded our stuff in the car, we stopped by Walmart before leaving town and stocked up on snacks and body armor plus some caffeine, which Grace proceeded to chug to see if it had any effect on her. Oh, also, a note about how I was running this trip. See, in the past, most trips I've been on, I've been actually aware of budgetary concerns, and while sure, that's pragmatic, it really steals the joy of the moment, because the whole time you're eating your steak or whatever you're thinking, man, this was so expensive, ... Was it worth it? How much is this whole thing going to cost me? And stuff like that. Hence, for this trip, I figured I would try something out and just make money literally not a concern. Like, it didn't matter what the thing cost. If we wanted it, we did it, with some common sense exceptions, obviously. And I must say, that way of doing a vacation made the trip so much better. I'm always going to do vacations like that from now on. It makes such a difference to the experience. All right, without further ado, here we go. We left Walmart and headed out into the barren plains of Colorado. We started listening to the group playlist we constructed. Massive playlist, mostly thanks to Benj's very good taste in music, wink, and just sang along and vibed. That was basically the tale any time we traveled, by the way. Like, there was one point where I gave part 1 of the Catholic talk, but basically the entire 50-ish other hours were spent listening to music, and it was great. We discovered we had a hitchhiking beetle, and upon me requesting Grace name it, it was dubbed Beatles. NE at its finest right there, XD. So Beatles traveled with us for a while as our mascot till Benj mercilessly yeeted him out the window. Yet deep down, I trust Beatles lived a full and happy life. ... After a lot more driving, we stopped at this Standfords wannabe, and it had big good pizza. We then continued on our way and saw these pretty flowers. It was cool to just see the yellow patches of beauty. As the night wore on, Grace and I had a conversation into the night, and Ben slept. Okay, so apparently I lied earlier. There was one other conversation other than the Catholic talk, XD, and that was decent. At like 2 or something, I got tired and let Grace take over driving, and I slept. But I have been assured Grace danced throughout the night, and honestly, I believe it. Every time I would wake up, she would be doing a jig that is best described as 1 part anime girl, which Grace just is, by the way. She is 100% the airhead character in my slice of life anime. I cannot be convinced otherwise, XD. 2 parts wiggle, and 1 part popular dance move, XD. So yeah, she drove through the whole night and, didn't even get tired. Originally, we thought the caffeine might be carrying her, but that hypothesis came into question due to later testing with the substance. Regardless, though, she did big well, and then Benj was able to take over driving after her, and it all worked out very well. Once Benj took over driving, the environment started to get pretty, and not just bland nothingness of death. It was all, lush and green, and it was great. Here's some pictures of us driving. After driving through all the cool Maryland mountain passes, Benj then began weaving through traffic like only an SE type can weave, and it was big fun. And also became, all of our go-to driving style from then on. After that, we got to our Airbnb, which was pretty darn nice. We choled for a bit before walking barefoot down to this fancy-ish restaurant, though we got lost in the process. Also, we decided to bring our shoes just in case we couldn't go inside barefoot, and that was a good call because in the end the restaurant was big fancy. Once there, we tried some interesting dishes, including crab mac and cheese, which was actually fire. Highly recommend. Here's some picture of us all eating there. Grace did not like any of the food. Her SI hardcore rebelled, ... But she did her best to try things, and with ample face slapping was able to eat a meal, XD. Once we finished eating, we stalled for a bit before meeting Sydney, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend at an ice cream place, and not gonna lie, it was pretty awkward. Sydney is an ISFJ, so not the I have a strong vibe kind of person. Hence, and especially since I didn't know she was an FJ until later, the whole time I was like, is she comfortable? Is she not? And I just couldn't read her. Hence, I think that contributed significantly to the awkwardness. Benj and Grace held their own, engaging the other two entourage in conversation, especially Benj. Like, holy cow, this man pulled out this hidden side of social prowess I did not see coming. I was pleasantly surprised. However, during this time, Grace, for some reason, unbeknownst to even herself, tried to run up the skate bowl at the park where we were and fell back and really hurt her heel. So, like, the whole trip, that haunted her. 'Twas a bummer. But yeah, it was basically entirely small talk, and I feel like the awkwardness broke just toward the end of the hangout. Not like entirely gone, but at least between Sydney and I dropped to insignificant levels. Still, something I will say is, even in our later hangouts, I never really felt like I really got to know Sydney. Like, I don't feel like I ever really saw her soul. I don't know how to describe it, but it was a touch sad. FJs be like that, so what do I expect? Anyway, we wrapped that up, walked back to our Airbnb at this point in time. Grace got mega grumpy and moody, likely because her SI was violated. Plus, she was majorly sleep deprived. But thankfully, once we got back, we were all able to just go straight to bed, so it worked out. The next morning, I woke up early and started doing research into what activities were nearby, and after a while, Benj woke up and joined me in the search. We settled on going to Six Flags, an amusement park, and also this fast racing thing, which we never did, sadly. But, man, it's much harder to find novel activities than you may think. Like, even later on in places like New York, there really aren't that many unique experiences. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I spent like 4 hours researching what to do while we were around. Came up with some trivial results, and I went out to lunch with Sydney and her brother Noah, also an ISFJ, funnily enough. Basically, the entire conversation was me trying to puzzle out what the heck both their types were, and I was mega struggle bussing, cause lol, FJ morphing. But eventually, after an age and so many questions, I found out they were, in fact, both ISFJs, so that was rewarding, though challenging, ... Freaking ISFJs, man. Once I got back, I found Grace awake after sleeping a total of 18 hours. She's quite proud of this sleeping record, XD. And then we all hopped in the car and drove to Washington, D.C. to see the sights. Due to Grace's heel, we decided to rent electric scooters. And honestly, that was so worth it. Like, that made that experience so much more fun, and we got to see quite a few things as a result of our increased speed of transportation. Photo montage! Exhibit A, tall statue man. I believe that is Thomas Jefferson. Exhibit B, building. Exhibit C, other building. Exhibit D, train station. Exhibit E, this. Exhibit F, sitting statue man. Exhibit G, building that houses our supreme leader and overlord. Exhibit H, Library of Alexandria 2.0. Exhibit I, the Capitol building. Exhibit J, some bell, which Benj rang. Exhibit K, something strange. I'll leave it up to you to determine the subject of the photo. XD. I think that's Benj. Exhibit L, me go vroom. Exhibit M, me go stare. And there you go. A mini photo montage. But yeah, Washington, D.C., it was cool and big fun, and my hands hurt from holding the scooter handles. Don't ask why, ... We also saw, like, the Capitol building, the Library of Congress, the White House, etc. It was all very surreal, since they are only places you hear about, not actually go to. Also, a complete side note, but the Washington, D.C. people apparently don't like being them, because all their license plates said no taxation without representation on them. So, I don't know. I guess they're salty about living where they do. But whatever, you do you, Washington, D.C. people. Oh, also, there were so many more black people once we reached Washington, D.C. But also, just on the East Coast in general, made me realize just how white Fort Collins is, ... Okay, with those tangents tackled, we then drove back, ate one of these. And I had never had dragon fruit before, so that was an interesting experience. They taste pretty bland, to be honest, ... Not a lot of flavor. And then Grace made us kielbasa spaghetti, which was good. And we watched the second Jumanji together, which was but still a good way to end the day, ... The next morning began in the afternoon with Sydney and Micha coming over. Therefore, I got to meet Sydney's fiance, who is totally an ENTP. He was great. Oh my gosh, bro. A ENTP and an ISFJ? Dog, what? I don't know about that one, man. Shoot, I lost my place in the email. He was great. Classic ENTP energy, which I love. We all played Smash Bros. For a bit, and I think Micah was a bit better than me, though not by much. And we had some good games. He got salty when I beat him in a 1v1, ... Then once that wrapped up, we all ate food and watched a Violet Evergarden movie, which I had only watched once before, and I remember not liking. But it was the right length, so I was like, let's go for it. It was so much worse than I remembered. Genuinely just a bad movie, even though it's Violet Evergarden. And you all know how much that pains me to say, XD. So yeah, that was probably a mistake, but we soldiered through, XD. When that ended, we drove to a nearby city to go do an escape room together, which was pretty good. They advertised it as us all being blindfolded and handcuffed, but that was basically a lie. They gave us those airline sleep masks and handcuffs we just unlocked as the first puzzle. See, I was really hoping we would have to do the whole thing at least handcuffed, but nope, 'twas a big sad ... Regardless, though, still a good escape room, 7 out of 10, and we did solve it in time, so that was a yay! After that, we all went out and got pizza together for dinner, and I got to hear Micah's conversion story to Catholicism, as well as talk with him about some Catholic stuff, so that was cool. Then we went to this very cool mountainy town, and after struggling to find parking for ages, got ice cream and walked around. That was decently fun, and we got to socialize with some drunk people. That was probably my favorite part, XD. After all that wrapped up, we watched this movie about the Great Wall of China and aliens, which I had watched sometime long before, but it was so long I forgot it, and thus a good rewatch. Then with that, we went to bed and arose the next morning. In the morn, because bacon had been previously purchased, it was made, though tediously. And as soon as it was consumed, we set out for Six Flags, only to discover they charged $40 for parking, which was dumb, ... But whatever. We then went on a host of roller coasters, easing the terrified Grace into more and more intense rides until finally she was able to do the biggest ride with her hands in the air the whole time. It took her a bit, but she totally got there, and I'm glad she pushed herself because I think she had a great time. Here are some pictures of the rides we went on. This was the Mind Eraser equivalent ride, which was fast and twisty. This was the Batman ride, where you hung on your stomach throughout the whole ride. A very cool experience. But the strap went over my port, so I had to do a weird arm scrunch thing the whole time, which made it less fun for me. And finally, by far the best coaster, the Superman roller coaster, where you got dropped from really high up and went sonic vroom. And yeah, there were a number of other roller coasters we went on, but those were the 3 highlights for sure. Overall, it was a very good time, and I officially discovered I absolutely love roller coasters. So much fun. Upon leaving Six Flags, after like 4 hours or so of roller coastering, we got Chick-fil-A and drove back toward where we came from to meet up with Sydney for one last hurrah and play a bunch of laser tag, a mini golf game, and this dance game that is the bane of my existence. First off, the laser tag. The laser tag arena was definitely unlike any other laser tag arena I had ever seen. It was super dense, like so many walls and crevices, but the walls had tons of holes in them, so you would get shot even in this super dense maze of walls. So I guess you could say it's a perforated wall. I think that's what you had said earlier when you were talking about, you made the analogy of walls. I think you said perforated. Anyway, at first the style really bugged me, but as we played it in it more, I came to actually really enjoy the dense style. Cool way to do a laser tag arena. We played quite a few laser tag games, and while there weren't a ton of people, it was still pretty fun. Benj and I were decently close on score in quite a few rounds, and one time he beat me. But most times I won, and I like winning. In mini golf, however, he creamed me. But only after an initial mind-blowing upset where Grace got like 4 holes in one straight. Like, I don't know what it was, but she would haphazardly hit the ball. Like, it wasn't like this was due to skill or anything. And it would just go in first try. It was nuts, ... However, thankfully her luck ran out around hole 8 or so, and it was an 18-hole course, so I was able to barely beat her out in the end. We had to do a tie-breaking round, wink. So yeah, that was pretty fun. Noah and Sydney were just kind of along for the ride and vibing. Finally, there was this dance game, which was basically Beat Saber, but for your feet, and holy cow, I must have garbage foot coordination, because it was actually so hard for me. I don't understand why this is, but it's actually true. I have such a hard time getting my feet to do what I want. Like, my hands, easy, but my feet, yeah, no way. And honestly, this doesn't make sense, because I've played soccer ever since I was a wee lad. But, on the other hand, it does make sense, because I never really learned any footwork in soccer. I just went vroom, and people couldn't catch me because I'm fast, wink. So yeah, I played that dance game a bunch. Benj also crushed me in that. And yeah, other than that, just played random arcade games with Sydney, Noah, Grace, and Benj until we called it a night. It was definitely a good way to spend the evening, a fairly lackluster facility, but we made it fun. From there, we drove to our next Airbnb and a renovated bus, and we engaged in delirious pillow throwing and attacked Grace with our feet, which was quite enjoyable. Until we eventually decided showering at a truck stop sounded fun, and because apparently I really like showers, like I might have an addiction, XD. And also, the Owl City song said to do it. And so, setting out at like 1 a.m, we drove over an hour to a truck stop. And I've got to say, that was probably my favorite part of the trip. It was late at night, I was feeling a little giddy, and just singing along to music and doing weird dances was actually so much fun. I deeply enjoyed that drive. Once we got there, we discovered the three of us showering would cost $50-something, which is crazy. But the overworked gas station attendant who didn't care about his job was like, I won't charge you that much. Just pay for one and you can have all three. So we got our showers for a third of the price. Still pricey, though. And I must say, it was a pretty lackluster experience. Like, it was a shower, they gave me a little blue towel, and that was it. However, it didn't help that I kind of rushed through my shower because I thought others would be waiting for me, only to then wait like 10 to 15 minutes for Benj to finish up. So, that probably tainted the experience. Still, glad I did it because I slept so much better than having had a shower. Slept better having had a shower. And I was quite sweaty and sunscreeny from our previous excursions that day. So yeah, we drove back and basically just crashed. The next morning, I again woke up early. I planned and researched activities for the day for ages and found this cool spy experience, which I ended up booking. And then we got on the road. We then drove to New York, of which here is a picture. We then navigated the train station with some pain, wall sat as we waited for the train to come, and then arrived at New York City, of which here is a full immersion picture. Once we emerged from the subway into New York proper, we took a big walk and went to this spy experience where we played a bunch of mini games in rooms, which were pretty fun. Then we went through this series of spy tests, including an IQ test, a lie detection test, a surveillance test, and an agility test, which, granted, were a bit childish, but also definitely still fun. When we got done with all that, we grabbed some Starbucks drinks and went to go visit the iconic Times Square, of which here's a photo. And Benj paid out $10 to play this guy in chess, of which here is a photo. He actually lost, believe it or not, but it was due to time, not positioning. Though the dumb thing was, it wasn't like both parties put up $10 and then whoever won got the spoils. It was literally just pay $10 if you won a game, and yet we did. So maybe it's not that crazy after all, XD. So yeah, that was an experience, and I could tell Benj was salty he lost on time, XD. From there, I called Benj and asked him for things to see, and he recommended some good options. But by the time we walked there, basically everything had closed, which honestly surprised me since it was only 8 or 9 at night at the time. Hence, we didn't get to see much. Plus, Grace's heel wasn't treating her well, so that also was a downside. We ended up getting pizza, because you can't go to New York and not get New York pizza, XD. And it was massive, so we didn't finish at it all. I tried to give it away to the other people getting pizza, but no one wanted it. So we were thinking we would give it to a homeless guy, because there were plenty of those around. But instead, Grace just threw it in the trash, so that was a rip. We then proceeded to ride the subway to what we thought was Central Park, but no. Apparently there's a 74th Ave and a 74th Street. Hence, we went to the wrong one and it was mega sad, ... Hence, after briefly emerging in some well-known New York adjacent place I should remember the name of, but I don't, we went back on the subway and began our trek home. It was at this point in time Benj and I, for lack of better activities to undergo, played tic-tac-toe in escalating versions of complexity and intensity on Grace's leg. That was great. However, what happened thereafter was not great, because it turns out subways are immensely confusing. For the next hour or so, we wandered around trying to interpret train maps to figure out where we were going. We bought so many superfluous train tickets during that time, it's not even funny. Then at 1 a.m., and after being thoroughly lost, I decided I would just ask people, which I should have done so much earlier. Because as soon as I did that, we were finally able to leave the maze of train stations and get back to our car and start driving back. My verdict from the experience, New York subways suck. So yeah, we finally got back to the car and then drove late into the night and returned to our bus at 4:30 in the morning. Also, Ben shaved over half an hour off our drive time with his loose interpretation of speed limits, which was much appreciated, XD. The next morning, we had to check out by 11, so we didn't get much sleep. We then drove for an age and just had a good time in the car until we neared Chicago around 8 or so and stopped at a Cracker Barrel for dinner, a goal of mine since the beginning of our escapades. Honestly, Cracker Barrel was kind of meh compared to my memory, but what childhood experience isn't that way? However, they did have these cinnamon things that were genuine fire, and also the pin game, which Benj of course won while I could not. DX. So, I decided to give him a super version, like so. And he almost beat even that, but not quite. Which was big sketch, because if he had gotten that first try, I think my TE ego would have just died, XD. Anyway, it was a good Cracker Barrel experience, but what I didn't take into consideration is it meant we wouldn't see the sunset on the Great Lakes, which was a big sad. So it was something of a mistake, but oh well, you live and you learn. Not sure when I'm ever going to apply that lesson, but let's not worry about it if it's pragmatically useful. All that matters is we learned something. So yeah, drove into Chicago and parked in this parking garage that began on the 4th floor and hence had this epic spiral driveway up to it. That thing was so fun, XD. Then from there we wanted to go to the top of the building and to see the city, but apparently the lounge where you used to be able to do that, quote, closed 2 years ago, quote. Which was definitely not true because we met people who said they had gone up into it just last year. However, the only other option cost $35 per person, and we all agreed that was far too pricey to go stare out a window. Hence, instead, we walked to a park where Benj and Grace waded in the Great Lakes. Oh, I almost forgot, but the sand was superb. Probably the most fine, soft sand I've ever experienced. Very good sand. Anyway, that said, I decided to take a dip and I regret nothing. And yeah, having seen the Great Lakes, we then walked back to our car past this epic church. Gosh, so cool. Look at that ivy and the Gothic architecture in the middle of the city. Ah, beauty, ... Then from there, we went on our way. At this point, both Benj and Grace were getting a bit grumpy, so that was a bit of a downer, but once they got some sleep, they did better. Once again, we drove straight through the night. We stopped at a nasty gas station, remarkably bad, ... And then the only other notable occasion on our way back was that cop-out running detailed in the intro. So yeah, despite consistently speeding at least 15 over the speed limit like the whole trip, we never got a single ticket. Actually, something of a miracle, ... XD. But yeah, we got back. Benj dropped Grace and I off at home, and that was the trip. Honestly, a really good trip. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Grace matched my score, and Benj gave it an 8.5 or 9, so it seemed like we all had a really good time. Apparently, Benj and Grace even got a bit sad the day after because it really sunk in that it was over, which I didn't experience, but thought that was interesting. Then again, maybe I didn't experience it because I just jumped straight back into an absorbently busy social life upon my return and hence didn't have time. Soon as I got back, I unpacked and then took a much-needed nap because, lol, sleep deprivation. Then upon waking, I walked over to the food trucks at City Park and joined John, Noah, Neo, Sydney, Pat, and eventually Braden in casual conversation about how bags of holding can make Death Star lasers while eating decent food from said food trucks. We then drove over to John's house where we all watched Atlantis. First time I had seen that actually, and I don't know, it was meh, but not bad. Then once I got back, I was pretty tired, but Ben broke up with Annalise, his girlfriend for the last age, and so he was feeling pretty down, so I stuck it out and had a car conversation with him, which I think he found pretty helpful, so I'm glad I did it. But once I got back from that, it was like 1 in the morning and I was mega tired, so I just crashed. The next morning, I woke up later in the day and got to reading one of the many cancer books I'm halfway through. Just as a side note, I hate leaving things halfway finished, but that's my life right now. So that's just kind of vexing, ... You have to prioritize, and if that means, and if that means leaving some projects unfinished, for now, then that's what you've got to do. I then went into the doctor to have him help me with the 7,000 bazillion skin issues I had put off, and hence had consumed my body. Turns out I had athlete's foot for the last 3 weeks, and I had 2 distinct rashes consuming me, so yeah, he kind of looked at me like, my guy, why didn't you see me sooner? To which I was like, yeah, because I thought maybe it will fix itself. But no, it did not fix itself. So yeah, he prescribed me some cream stuff. I ate 5 guys, and then picked that up. Then I read more, called with the chiropractor lady to schedule my first appointment, because I'm going to be doing that now, ... I then caught up on life with Emerson before driving over to Trisha's house and talking with her and eating dinner with her family. Not a super useful conversation, but still glad I had it. Also, I have yet to actually look at the resources she sent me, because I've just been that busy. So maybe there are some real good things once I actually do a stare. I then came back home and I was going to read more and be productive, but then Sam practically begged me to come to Magic, so I had to come for his sake, ... So yeah, I played Magic with the people at the Myers house, went on a night walk with Seth, went on a night walk with Sam, Seth, Benj, and Johanna, and then went on a night walk with Benj and Johanna, aka mucho night walks. From there I drove back home, voiced an emotional grievance that was handled quite well, and then promptly slept. The next morning, I forgot to put in my notes for some reason, and thus have no idea what I did, except I know I went on a long night drive with Joe and had a good conversation. That's how I know I forgot a day. XD. So yeah, that day has been largely lost to the ether for all time and eternity. What a sad ... Well, now I'm inspired to tangent. Okay, I'm going to do my best. Doesn't it make you all sad that most of your days are like that, insignificant and destined to be forgotten, almost to be as if they never happened in the first place? I think that's one major reason why I do these life update emails. For by enshrining each day in writing, no matter how trivial or brief, I know, brief isn't a word that should ever be associated with life updates, XD. It's as if I capture time and immortalize it. Each day now has significance, with meaning that can't be undone by the fading of memory. And through these digital characters pressed into the page, my days live on in perpetuity, unfading and eternally well spent, ... I like that. Moving on. I did 2 hours of life update email work before Joe and Benj appeared, and we all painted our nails black for the upcoming pre-release. This is how the second time I've painted my nails. The first being for the, quote, girls' slumber party event on the trip. And while I'm far more okay with it now than I was back then, it's still not my favorite. It makes me feel feminine. Yeah, sure. But regardless, we did it, and as we waited for our nails to dry, we watched Dear Kristen YouTube videos, which I'm on a kick of recently. Then Joe spontaneously and graciously offered to cut my hair, and Ben spontaneously and graciously built a shelf. He didn't really offer, he just basically did it, ... XD. ISTPs, man, ... So yeah, it was at this point in time I realized having sensing friends is great, cause lol, they like and value practical things and not just talking and being useless. Yes, I just dissed myself, but it's true, XD. Am I happy to help you theoretically dissect the Kalam cosmological argument for 3 hours? Absolutely. Am I happy to help you make a meal? No. No, I'm not. I acknowledge I'm mostly practically useless. Well, technically false. I can do basically all those practical things because lol te-dom, I just don't enjoy the practical things, ... But of course I think my use is of a higher calling, quote, so I'm okay with that, ... Anyway, the point was I felt grateful for Benj and Joe as friends. That's really the whole point of the story. After Joe cut my hair, I left in a hurried fashion with Benj still midway through shelf construction, but he was cool with that. Wink. Because I was scheduled to get my port flushed. So I showed up to the hospital, got stabbed without numbing cream, which really isn't bad at all, ... I don't know why I used the numbing cream in the first place. And then came back home and spoke with Karina at Noodles for a few hours, during which I received an angry call from a desk lady because I forgot about my blood draw appointment with Dr. Singer. That's the first appointment I have forgotten, which is really honestly impressive as I don't keep a calendar and largely just keep all the things I need to do and when in my head, ... But yeah, she was not an amenable receptionist, but I handled the conversation decently, I do believe. From there, I finished up my convo with Karina, drove to the Magic pre-release, and proceeded to Magic. Honestly, I did pretty well. I got 11th out of the 39 participants, and did the best out of anyone in the Southgate friend group, so that's a win. And Joe was salty, because he actually put a ton of time into researching the cards and planning, but then he got bad pulls, so it didn't matter. That's the dumb thing about Magic pre-release. It's only so much about skill. But anyway, I won both pack rounds and got 4 prize packs, so in the end I walked away pretty loaded with packs and hence would call the night a pretty solid win. The next morning I worked out, watched some YouTube, and then facilitated a discussion between Joe and Karina regarding relationship stuff, which went quite well, if I do say so myself. I then got back home, worked on this life update, and then proceeded to drive to Olive Garden, where I talked with Jack and Emerson, and talked with them about their relationship dynamic, which I think went well. It's just I was already emotionally tired from the previous conversation, and therefore I don't think they got the peak Alex experience. But, what can you do? Also, completely unrelated, but Olive Garden is not as good as I remember it. I mean, I did just end up getting the endless breadsticks, soup, and salad deal, but still kind of meh. From there, I, being tired, decided to go on a relaxing drive with Grace out in the storm while lying in her car bed. But while we were doing that, Benj texted me asking if I wanted to play in the rain, which, first off, how cool is that as far as requests go? We should all ask each other if we want to go play in the rain together. And Grace and I were already basically halfway to his house. We were like, yeah, sure, why not? So we got there, picked up Benj and Johanna, and then proceeded to throw Eliana in the mix as well. And then we went and played at this park, chased after a murdered lady's scream, and then dropped Eliana off before taking the Myers home. However, before we returned to the Myers abode, we took a slight detour to visit a monument of sorts, and we have ... made decisions. Is that vague and ambiguous? Yes. Yes, it is. ... XD. So yeah, after that, we got back to the Myers house and talked for a bit in the car before Johanna had to go, because worship in the morning. And so we called it there. It was a very fun night, though, all things considered. The next day at church, I began to really feel the wear of basically going non-stop like I have. But of course, that didn't really mean I took a break. It just meant I underperformed socially, XD. Hence, I lay on the church chairs and had a whole conversation in that posture, and it was quite enjoyable. We then did our lovely table gathering, and it was good. I gave Katie some big brain thoughts I was having, and then I went over to the Myers house and played Magic till 5 with Sydney and John, since Neo wasn't feeling well. Once I got home, I found Katie and Emerson in Grace's room, so I sat in there and drank various liquids, being tired, as I watched Katie be obtusely energetic. Emerson was kind of my chill buddy for that stretch of hangout, because she was also tired, so we were tired together, and that was nice. We then went over to CSU's pool, where I took Katie as my wife and adopted Emerson and Grace as my children. The guy on duty clearly didn't care. It was his last summer working there, so he was like, yo, you can do this family thing to get people under 18 in as long as you register a spouse and the children. Hence, I registered Katie as my spouse and Emerson and Grace as my children. So we got in for free, and I was like, heck yeah! Also, this was not how I foresaw getting a spouse, just saying, XD. Also, here is said Katie with angel wings. So yeah, with my new family established, we then swam in the CSU pool, sat in the hot tub, poorly played water volleyball, and raced each other. Hee, I won, wink. And yeah, it was fun. Once we left, we decided to grab Rowan and get more ice cream at Churn, a common practice for us these days. And then from there, we journeyed to Adelaide's house, wherein we played. We didn't play test this at all, which some of us enjoyed more than others. And then I had a debate with Rowan about Jungian psychology and his hating of it into the night. Very good discussion. Good civil TE debate. Then that ended, and we drove Emerson back and went to sleep. The next day I met up with Dr. McFarland, my primary traditional cancer doctor, and I wasn't looking forward to that because the normal doctors are never like, sure, kid, go do non-traditional things. But surprisingly, while he certainly wasn't on board, he was still willing to work with me and get me PET scans, so that was a super pleasant surprise and made my life so much better. So yeah, that was very good. Once I got home, I had a brief conversation with Grace, in which I did functionally nothing. Then I went to Noodles with the fam, and gave them all the cancer update and what's going down. I then worked through some cancer technicalities before meeting Rebecca at Wolverine Farm, which is a very cool coffee shop, I must say. First time being there, but I approve. And we talked about all the things, and I'm pretty confident she found it all quite helpful. So that is exciting. She also had an exceptional retention for an INFP, so that was cool to see. Once I got home, I talked to the great Varley over Messenger for about an hour. I swear, that man is beauty itself. I actually love our nerd banter. Then I went to Monday night where, instead of our typical D&D stuff, we did mucho magic and trading, since we had new cards from the pre-release. But the more significant thing to me that happened is we saw this epic sky. Honestly, probably the coolest sky I've ever seen. Like, take a look at this. Ah, man. So good. But regardless, magic night ended. It was decent, and then I took Neo home and called it a night. The next day, I had my first chiropractic appointment in which I found this written on the wall, which naturally raised my heckles for naturopathy, but the actual chiropractor lady seemed sane enough. However, this was my first time ever going to a chiropractor, and man, it was weird. She would be like, gentle press, poke, prod, gentle press, violence! And then my back would rupture and pop, and then the cycle would repeat. It was an odd experience. I didn't feel that different after. I mean, I did feel different, just not that different. Once I got home from that, I then called with this person in Colorado Springs my parents had found, and then spent $7,000 to enter their care. Actually, so much money. Again, only possible because of the mass generosity of those around me. ... After that, I then did paperwork, drove to UC Health, and got my thyroid ultrasound, from which I learned that my cancer has spread to the lymph nodes in my neck, which have grown into about 2 centimeters in size. And that growth has happened in less than a month, and more likely in about 2 weeks, given I remember those lymph nodes in particular hurting quite badly about 2 weeks ago. Hence, I'm definitely kind of concerned at the rate at which this cancer is both growing and spreading. Like, I need to get on this ASAP, ... But regardless, once I got back from that, Taylor, Emerson, Jack, Ben, and Grace were all going swimming, and they invited me to join, so I obliged. And that was fun. We found this waterlogged log, and I made it a cult. Here's Ben's best be real of that event. Once I got back home, I had burgers. Thanks, parents. And then proceeded to drive to the Myers to talk with Johanna about the things. Very good conversation. Before then getting home, working on cancer stuff, a bit on this life update, and then going to sleep. And yeah, as for today I woke up, talked with Katie for 3 or so hours about Catholicism and Orthodoxy. She was a very good conversation partner. Got my RGCC test back with all its data I have yet to examine. And then I've worked on this life update till now. And yep, that's it. Thank you for your continued patronage, life update readers. XD.